Good morning and good morning. Good morning. Safra de Maratova. How have you been?
Thank God. How's the road?
Haidullah Shem Kitov.
I saw a very brief clip and then I saw it edited afterwards. And I thought I saw the Rebbe say to Nathaniel many years ago that he will be the Nasi when Mashiach comes. And then later on I saw the same clip and that part was edited out. Was it known to be a real?
I don't know. I never heard that.
You never heard that? Really?
Yeah, somebody also mentioned that the Rebbe said that to him, but I don't know. I never saw such a thing. I mean, it's usually very rare he should say such a thing, so it's a little surprising to me.
Really?
Yeah, it could be it was more like a bracha.
Right. The shem bracha.
More like a bracha, or that hopefully Mashiach will come now. So
Right.
I think that makes more sense. The Rebbe was very careful with these things. He also was very careful of conferring too much spiritual power and dignity over a political personality who, comes and goes and has ups and downs and makes mistakes. And
Right. And it's swayed by other powers.
other powers, and so he was very.
Right.
He gave whatever he can give, wisdom and love and empathy and encouragement and motivation, but didn't turn it into, David HaMelech is one of the Raglei HaMerkava. David HaMelech is Shal Chai V'Kayim.
Right.
It's a funny story. There was once a Lag BaOmer parade in Crown Heights. They had the Lag BaOmer parade. The Rebbe would come out with all the kids. Every year it was beautiful. This was 10,000 kids, 20,000. It was a very nice event. So so they would have all these signs, Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe, Shema Yisrael, V'afta L'recha Kamocha, whatever. So they had one sign, David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayim, and they would have floats, and a big David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayim. So the foreign minister of Israel was then David Levi. And he visited the parade, and he says, "Wow, Eze Kavod Natnuli! Look at that! I didn't think they know how to give so much kavod." It worked.
Was he joking? He wasn't joking.
No, he thought that it was made for him. Yeah, it was cute. It was charming.
Right.
Or maybe he was joking. I don't know. That was the story that went around. Right. Maybe it was just. It was very funny. But it's unbelievable what's happening now. Hashem has given Israel historic opportunities that it hasn't had in 100 years, literally.
Trump said yesterday he wants to buy out Gaza.
Yeah, I saw.
It's a brilliant cup.
I mean, the opportunities that Israel has now to tell the world the truth about Eretz Yisrael is unprecedented.
Be unashamed. This is our life.
Unashamed, the whole Eretz Yisrael, it's God's gift to us. You want to live here like a mensch as a guest, wonderful. If not, there's a big planet.
Right.
And to give the Arabs the memo that we won the war and the game is over. It's an unbelievable opportunity. If Jews can get rid of their own inferiority complex.
Right.
I mean, you saw what happened yesterday with Trump saying, he'll take over, America's going to take over Gaza, make it the Riviera of the Middle East, with thousands of jobs, and the game is over. And the woman said, "But it's their home, it's their home." He said, "It's hell." What a home? It's a hell. It's a hell house. He said, "It's a hell house." That you call that home? That conviction, that ability, for Jews to be so scared to use any word, God forbid, to say it's ours. You're not allowed to do that. It's not politically correct. And here comes the most powerful person in the world, and says it berachel bidcha ktana. It's called basic common sense. I mean, besides anything else. Right? What we've been doing hasn't worked. Decades of blood and blood and blood and blood. You got to do something different. Yeah, and everybody's quiet. Everybody listens because they say, "Oh." Netanyahu said yesterday. He says that people hear what Trump says, they go crazy, and then they scratch their head and they say, "He's right." It's an unbelievable opportunity for Israel. Unbelievable. Not just with Gaza, with Yehuda, with Shamron, with all of Eretz Yisrael.
The way we know it's good is because Ben Gvir said he'll rejoin the coalition.
Yes, yes. No, it's really it's unprecedented. I just hope we get the memo. It's literally a historic opportunity for moral clarity and for conviction, strength, identity. Yeah.
That's like it's so funny.
And then Mashiach could come.
How it's like the not right moral clarity
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, as the Rambam writes in Hilchos Deis, when you pull, when you bend the page completely in one direction, you have to do the opposite direction. You can't do derech emtsoyis. Derech emtsoyis is for normal people. When a world is sane, derech emtsoyis, a middle path, is very good. When insanity goes one way, you must have a power of insanity to bring it back to the middle. Yeah, we call it shtus dikdusha, exactly. That's why he was chosen. Any person who would be different, would try to do the middle path, they would never be able to win. You're talking about a culture that went insane. You can't talk about men and women anymore. I mean, there's nothing you're allowed to talk about. Hitler is not evil. October 7th wasn't evil. You're talking about a culture, you're talking about Harvard, you're talking about the elite of American culture that went completely insane. Who can begin to heal it? Conversations, intellectualism, that's the problem, intellectualism. Intellectualism has been hijacked completely by insanity. You needed to have mamash a koyach of someone. yeah, mamash. It's an unbelievable thing that you see. Huh? Yeah. yeah. It's really fascinating. I mean, he may have been chosen by God to heal the world, to bring it back to some moral sanity. I mean, there was an insanity that went on. There was no right and wrong. There's no civilization without that. There's no Lashavas Yitzhara. It was like Dar Hamabel. Malach Haaretz Hamas. Hamas became the hero. Literally, Malach Haaretz Hamas. Mamish. Somebody to simply say, raping a woman is evil. Oh, really? Whoa, we never knew that. Oh, burning a child alive is not a right thing. Oh, wow! Trump was mechadish that. We don't believe in burning children alive. For the president of Harvard, you can't say that. Who speaks like that? Microaggressions are much more important than not burning children alive. Not insulting you in a lecture is much more important. I mean, you're talking about insanity of the highest levels. So it's fascinating. We have to be grateful.
You think this is the turnaround?
I hope.
Yeah.
The beginning of the beginning.
Our job is to be the conduits, but we have to be conduits. And but it seems like he was. I saw yesterday. It's literally a historic opportunity for the leadership of Israel. But I don't know if they got the memo. Trump got the memo already. I don't know if they got the memo. There's a deep fear that Jews have. Gullus has gotten to the Jewish people. It's called 2,000 years. 2,000 years of horrible persecution gets to people. Some people call it that. Huh? Yeah. Huh?
Time to let go of the drama.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. We should see Psuras Tovas, B'Tova Nirava Nigla. V'nafechu, the complete transformation of the darkness into light. Huh? Yeah, listen, at the end of the 60s, the 70s, I remember I was a kid, I went to Israel, I think, in the early 81, or a young child. You could see the Arabs were frightened from Israeli soldiers. You could go anywhere. Remember, we went to Yericho. It was safe. You went to Shechem, Kever Yosef. Nobody even thought twice. There was a fear that existed. And it was good for them. They were safe. It was good for them. Yeah. And then the Jewish people, in their own insanity and insecurity, completely resurrected, allowed the terror organizations to be resurrected by ceding not just territory to them, but by ceding conceptual territory to them. By saying there's two sides here, you have a perspective, we have a perspective, and that moment they saw that, they knew we could win. And the terror didn't cease for one day. And all of their changes, they didn't go back to the basics. Send them the memo. We won this war. It's our land for eternity. We're going to live in every part of it. This is our land. We have one little piece of land. There's 52 Muslim countries. There's one little tiny Jewish country forever and ever and ever. You want to live like a mensch, as a guest good. The word democracy intoxicated them so much. And here you have the President of America, who said, I'm going to take over Gaza. Not Israel, not the Jewish people who've been in Israel for 4,000 years. Me, Trump. America, that's not even 300 years old, is going to occupy Gaza. And one of the women was here, but it's their home. It's their home. What about democracy? But everybody understood. You're talking about a hell house. You're talking about what democracy? Gehenna. Berlin in 1945, what's democratic about taking over Berlin? The answer is you have Hitler. You have Hitler. There's no democracy. But Jews were so busy with democracy, that they allowed Hitler to grow and grow and grow and grow, and that's what they're facing now. And here you have a non-Jew who's trying to teach them how to respond. Democracy you talk about when there's two people who can respect each other, who are happy if you split the cake, you take 50, I take 50, and we're both happy. What you're talking about, it's a cancer that wants to destroy you and your children completely. The word democracy is the most foolish, undemocratic word in the world. Democracy is based on principles of love of life, respect for your neighbor, human decency, the ability that we both need to coexist. When you're talking with an ethos that it's Kula Shali, the whole thing is mine. We're going to kill every last Jew. October 7th is going to happen again and again and again. To use the word democracy is the most foolish and undemocratic concept in the world.
But it happened with Chamberlain and Hitler.
Yeah, this is Chamberlain and Hitler. Yeah, but you would think that the Am Chacham V'Navin, the intelligent Jews, would have learned from Chamberlain.
I vote Rebbe for president.
Huh?
I vote Rebbe for president.
We have a president. My natural... He's nominating me for president of Gaza. Gaza's looking for a president. I don't think Trump is giving away that position. He said it's the Riviera of the Middle East. That was pretty cool. I was in Gaza. You ever been there? The coast. It's amazing. Gush Katif. Yeah, amazing place. Beautiful. Something beautiful. They gave it literally to the Nazis with the greenhouses. Yeah. Within a few hours, everything was destroyed and the missiles started to come. If Israel had a little seichel, if Sharon had a little dignity, he would say, it's over. We're done. So what happened? They made Hamastan there. They literally, it was like Hitler was in a bunker, and imagine the Allies would tell Hitler, okay, we have Rahmanas on you. You know what? Take over a little part of Berlin and stay there. And a few years later, a second Holocaust. That's what they want. They want a second Holocaust. And this is Arik Sharon. Arik Sharon, who his whole life was a bulldozer. But his strength wasn't rooted in Jewish roots. Same thing with Rabin and Peres. And even Menachem Begin with Camp David. The greatest disappointment was Menachem Begin, because Menachem Begin was a Jew who was so proud of Judaism. You know, he kept Shabbos to a certain degree. He was made of a different cloth, Menachem Begin. But when it came to Camp David, he surrendered to the pressure of Jimmy Carter, and Egypt. And the peace with Egypt, you see what happened, what it looks like. The whole Gaza, Hamastan, was built because of Egypt. This was one of the most foolish mistakes Israel made, and it was the precedent for Oslo and Gush Katif, the Camp David Accords. Menachem Begin, but the pressure was so deep, because the presidents then weren't like Trump. They would pressure you like crazy. And if you didn't have good Jewish identity, it was very, very difficult. Huh?
He was a tough guy.
Stubborn man. Okay, so that's this commentary. All the news that's fit to print. To hear. Welcome back, everybody. Or I should welcome myself. Okay, it's working. Everything is good. You checked? Good morning.
People have been listening to your commentary.
Okay. So we have learned 5 classes, 5 shiurim on the Maimer Basi Legani, Tavshin Chafhei, Basi Legani 5725, 1965, that the Rebbe presented on Yud Shvat Tavshin Chafhei at the yard site of the Rebbe Rayatz, the 6th Lubavitcher Rebbe, as he would say every year, the Maimer Basi Legani, as we discussed in the earlier classes. So the first 5 classes, we went through the first section of the Maimer, and we're now in this kuntus, we are up to page Page Yud Daled. Page Yud Daled, in the middle of Seif Gimel. The second paragraph, Va'adayin Tzarech Lahavin. Page Yud Daled in this contrast. And so we're now going to continue. Okay, this series is graciously dedicated in loving memory and Leilu Nishmas Harav Hagoner Rav Chassid Reb Shneir Chaim HaKoyen Gutnik Ben Harav Hagoner Rav Chassid Reb Mordechai Ze'ev HaKoyen Gutnik. He was one of the great rabbis of Australia, Rabbi Chaim Gutnik, Zechrona Levracha, who I had the privilege of knowing. It's also dedicated by our friend Rebbe Ezra David Philip in honor and in tribute of the Rebbe and his shluchim for creating a revolution to bring Mashiach Tzidkenu now. Amen. Kein Yehi Ratzon. Thank you, Rebbe Ezra David. God bless you. Okay, just before we begin inside, we're going to start Vadayin Tzarech Lahavin. So Be'ezer Hashem, we're learning today. We're also going to learn tomorrow, and we're also going to learn Friday. So this week we'll have a shir also Thursday morning and Friday morning, also 7:45. Yud Shvat actually is on Shabbos. So Mitzvah Shabbos is going to be a big fabrengen here. Everybody is invited. It's going to be 24 Shei upstairs next door. And it starts 8:30 p.m. with a Malava Malk and hot food and music and a beautiful fabrengen honoring the 75th yahrzeit of the Rebbe Rayatz and 75 years of the Rebbe's leadership. And Be'ezer Hashem will also be on live stream, 9 o'clock on the yeshiva.net. It will be live streamed. So that's this coming Mitzvah Shabbos. Please share with relatives or friends. Okay, so we have been exploring what's called in Kabbalah and Chassidus Soid HaTzimtzum, the secret of the Tzimtzum. The Tzimtzum, which is one of the profound ideas in Torah Hanister and Pnimiyus HaTorah and Kabbalah and Chassidus, that the Arizal first articulated clearly in his Sefer Eitz Chaim, in the beginning of Eitz Chaim. And this concept of Tzimtzum has not just ramifications about some aspects of life, but of all of life, and really the essence of life and the essence of Yiddishkeit. We learned a lot of the introductions to this concept of Tzimtzum. We learned about what the Zohar says, Eirein Soif Lamata Adin Ketz, Ulamayla Adin Tachlis, that the light of Ein Soif, the manifestation of Ein Soif, which is what light is, the transition of Ein Soif, comes in two forms, so to speak, or at least we call it two forms from our limited perspective and vocabulary. Lamata Adin Tachlis, which means it extends downward to no end, but it also extends upward to no end. And he explained what that means is, it's not just saying the same words. You could just say it's endless, it extends everywhere. But it's actually representing two different concepts. Lamata Adin Tachlis means that it comes out, even in the lowest places, the light is manifested and can be perceived. Lamayla Adin Ketz is that the Oir, as he puts it, ascends behelim achar helim ube'ilu achar ilu, concealment after concealment, above to no end. And above here means in the sense that this oir is enclosed and camouflaged by in concealment after concealment, which each concealment really means that the light is going higher and higher. We'll soon see why. But it means it's going higher and higher. That has to be explained. Somebody wrote me a letter why it's higher and higher. L'chayda means lower and lower, but it really is higher and higher. That's a big chiddush. We're going to understand why at the end of the Maimer. Why behelim achar helim is ilu achar ilu. L'chayda means lower and lower, more concealment, more concealment. But here he says it's higher and higher. Right? Lamata adin tachlis means more revealed and more revealed. Even in the lowest places, there's a revelation. Even post Tzimtzum. And lamayla adin ketz means higher, more and more and more concealed. But in all the concealments, it's still completely Eirein Soif. And that's the treasure that's given to the soldiers when they need to win the war, the Eitzer that we spoke about in the beginning of the Maim. So for this, he started to explain this is the concept of Tzimtzum, that the Eir is concealed. And we brought the whole Torah of the Baal Shem Tov on Tzimtzum, and the whole Torah of the Maggid on Tzimtzum. And then he started to explain the actual inyan of Tzimtzum. And he gave the introduction that Alter Rebbe teaches, that Tzimtzum is only in the Eir, not in the Moyer. Which means, The word tzimtzum means concealment. Concealment can happen where there's revelation. Where there's revelation, there can also be concealment. In light, you could talk about the light is revealed, it's present, it's manifested, it's felt, it's experienced. Light means the experience of something. So there's also the non-experience of it, the concealment of it. But atzmos, the Maya, the source of it, over there you can't say the word revelation. You also don't say the word concealment. It is what it is, and over there was never a tzimtzum. So that remains, as the Alter Rebbe says in full tact, when the Kabbalah of the Arizal speaks of tzimtzum, he's talking about Ohr Ein Sof. That's why the word he uses, the Ohr Ein Sof, the light of Ein Sof filled the entire expanse and space of reality, and over there was a tzimtzum in the light. And the Maya, in the source, there was no light. No, not everybody agrees for this. No. There's machlokes about this. Do we agree about everything? Do anybody agree about everything? There's no such a thing. Huh? Yeah, he just thinks he's the Meyer. He articulated very clear in Torah, Parshas Vayera, many places in Likutei Torah, that the whole union of Tzimtzum is only in Ohr. As he puts it there, Hamoyer hu bizgalos. Those are his words. Hamoyer hu bizgalos. When he says Hamoyer hu bizgalos, he doesn't mean his galos like Ohr. He means his galos means it's fully as is. There's no change, and that's why children, even children, yoidim, his lashon is afilu tenoikus yoidim sheyesh lekam matzah. Even children know that Hashem is here. How do children? What's the big deal? Children know. You taught it to them, so they know it. The Rebbe is saying the child in each of us knows it. That's atzmos. The child doesn't know about Atzilus and Spheris and Adam Kadmon and Kalim and Kav and Rishimu and Toyu and Tikkun. The child doesn't know this. A child speaks about Hashem, he speaks about atzmos. And over there was no tzimtzum. And that's the idea of Shem Shemayim Shagar B'fi Kol. Yeah, Yid says the Eibishter is da, Hashem is here. That's the union of atzmos. Over there was no tzimtzum. And that's in many ways a very simple thing, but it's everything. That's beyond Ohr. Ohr is the way it's manifested, it's experienced, it's revealed, it's transmitted, which is what light means. Light means when something in its essence is not anymore in its essence, it's revealed to me. The fact that there's light in the room allows me to see you. The question is, how much of you do I see? Right? In Ohr, there could be so many different levels. There could be the concealment of Ohr, there could be the revelation of Ohr. But in Atzmos, he says there's no concealment, there's also therefore no revelation. It's not the union of Tzimtzum, is not Shaykh to Ohr. That's the first step he explained. And this will become very, very relevant, as we will see later on. Now he's going to go to the Chiddush of Ohr. Even the Tzimtzum in Ohr is Shaloi Kipshutai. Even though the Arizal says in Ohr there is a Tzimtzum, in Ohr there is no Tzimtzum. Granted, fine. Yet not everybody agreed to this. Some held that Tzimtzum was also in the Ohr and Atzmos. Yeah, this was a shitta from those who interpreted Arizal a certain way. That Tzimtzum, this is part of the machlokes of Tzimtzum Kipshutai. Literally, or not Kipshutai, is also if it was in the Meyer or only in the Ohr. That's part of the machlokes. In Ohr there was also a machlokes if it's Kipshutai or Shlei Kipshutai. That's one machlokes. But there's another machlokes if the Tzimtzum was in the Meyer or Bechlal not in the Meyer. The Alter Rebbe held, and this was the Shittas Abal Shem Tev, and the whole Chassidus is based on this. Major themes in Chassidus is based on this. It all comes back to this. The Alter Rebbe held and says clearly that in Atzmos there was Bechlal no Tzimtzum. The whole word, the whole concept, the whole experience of Tzimtzum doesn't even relate to Atzmos. Even in Ohr, there was no real Tzimtzum. What do you mean there was no real Tzimtzum? It's nonsense that Rizal was making a joke. Tzimtzum Shalei Kipshutai means it can be perceived as a Tzimtzum. Don't take the word literally. Don't think the word literally means it's a perception, and it's a real perception. Perception doesn't mean here that I'm just, I had a daydream for a few minutes. It's a perception that creates quite a lot of havoc, and it's a perception that is essential to the purpose of creation. We don't here mean a perception, take your vitamins and drink a coffee and get rid of your perception. We're talking here a perception that becomes reality. But ultimately, we're using the word perception because that means it can be worked through. At the core of reality, there's Tzimtzum Shalei Kipshutai. And that's now going to be discussed. And we're going to see throughout the ramifications of this about our own life. Every inyan that we learn about, as I always say, it's not about some philosophical concept, somewhere above. That may be a nice Torah and a nice shir and a nice pilpul. That's all good, and it's limud HaTorah, and it's part of Yediyas Hashem, and it's limud pnimis HaTorah. But every nekuda, literally, the whole inyan is the change in a person's life. What it means in my life, what it means in my relationships and my conduct, from when I wake up in the morning through till I retire at night, including the entire night. In other words, the way it affects a person internally and externally in every facet of their life, practically, physically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, and certainly our avodas Hashem. So he goes weiter, he says, but here we need to understand, when we talk about the Ein Sof, the revelation of the light of Ein Sof pre Tzimtzum, which the Arizal says, this is a quote, that Oid Elyon Pashat, there was a transcendent, simple light that filled all of Metzias. This is how the Arizal describes pre-Tzimtzum reality. And when we say pre-Tzimtzum reality, we're not talking in time, as I always say, it's right now. It's beyond the level of time and space. Pre-Tzimtzum doesn't mean, 26 billion years ago before the Tzimtzum, or 5,786 years ago, before the Tzimtzum 5785 years ago. Pre-Tzimtzum is also now. It's a state of reality. Is. And as we're going to see, and I don't want to spoil it, the whole chiddush of the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe was that state of reality is also now. That's what Tzimtzum Shalei Kipshutei means. Okay, but that's going to be developed here. And the reason it's going to be developed is, you just say, believe the Arizal, believe the Alter Rebbe. I believe the Alter Rebbe, I have no problem believing the Alter Rebbe. But that's not the Vart. For that you didn't need a Tzimtzum. The whole idea of Tzimtzum is that it should be able to be worked through and experienced by the person. That's why embodiment is the key, and that's what we're going to see is the whole inyan of Tzimtzum. The inyan of Tzimtzum is internalization. Like the Maggid put it, there should be able to be Achdus. Tzimtzum is an uptight in Achdus. And that was the revolution of the Baal Shem Tov. Tzimtzum is not Tzimtzum, Tzimtzum is Achdus. That changes everything. Literally, Tzimtzum is not Achdus. Tzimtzum means distance. Tzimtzum means I'm withdrawing, literally withdrawal. That's what the word Tzimtzum means, to withdraw. L'tzamtzem, to filter, to condense, to limit. L'tzamtzem et ha'or, to limit, to shrink the or and give you only a little bit. In other words, I'm withdrawing, I'm giving you a drop. From the Niagara Falls, you're getting 1 cup of water. From the sun, you're getting 1 little ray of light. Right? It's a limit. That's what the word Tzimtzum means, to limit. You say a person is an Adam Mitzumtzam in Hebrew. What does it mean, Adam Mitzumtzam? Huh? If it's Shaloi Kipshuta. I want to bring out, it's important. Mitzumtzam means very narrow, right? Very mitzumtzam. You think in tzimtzum. What do you mean you think in tzimtzum? You think very, very small. You're not expansive. So the word tzimtzum actually means that the Ein Sof went into smallness, not expansive. And that was necessary to create the world. Because if Ein Sof would be expansive, not but tzimtzum, everything would be infinite. I wouldn't be sitting here talking about infinity. Right? The very fact that there's you and I and we're sitting here and dealing with our lives, that's Tzimtzum. Comes the Maggid and tells us that the whole Tzimtzum was there should be Achdus. In other words, Tzimtzum is not about withdrawal, it's about unity. Tzimtzum is a din in Achdus. That flipped it completely. So the process must be integrated because that is the whole point. We're not trying to undo the Tzimtzum, we're trying to transform the Tzimtzum. There's a big difference between undoing and transforming. The purpose of coming into this world was not to undo what happened. For that you didn't have to create the world, just undo. You press Control, Alt, Delete. Thank you. The point is to transform it. You understand the difference? It's a very big difference. Just to come into darkness and then cancel it, do woke on darkness. They should do woke on darkness, not on light. So for that, you didn't have to come into it. The Chiddush is not to cancel it out, to transform it. For that, you have to work through the Tzimtzum. You have to work with the Tzimtzum. And you have to burst the bubble. You have to create a crack in the Tzimtzum and open it up, dissect it. Yeah. So if the Tzimtzum originated in a sense of distance, then it's a real Tzimtzum. But if the whole Tzimtzum originated in infinite love, so the question is, why would you make a Tzimtzum? And for this is going to be the answer is, the whole Tzimtzum is for Achdus, for oneness, for love, for deeper love. And that's really Tzimtzum Shaloi Kipshute, the way it comes out in Avodah, as we will see. Yeah. But that has to be worked out. That's what I'm saying. We need all these biyudim and esbeidim. People say, what do you need? It gets very nuanced and intricate. Because life is nuanced and intricate. You understand? Every nekuda of tzimtzum is translated in people's lives. In other words, and this is interesting, I'm not going to get too detailed here for obvious reasons, because this itself could become endless. Any experience in your life is either from post-tzimtzum or pre-tzimtzum. Any experience. Even if I can't find the key to my car, and I'm late to the class, and I'm getting frustrated and annoyed with the person who used the car yesterday and didn't leave the key in the car. Okay, I know I'm giving a very, it didn't happen today, but it happens. Very personal, doesn't seem like a big crisis, because it's not. Huh? Yeah. Right. But there's an emotion that just happened. That emotion could be traced back to tzimtzum. Well, were you joking? Yeah, in other words, that emotion, whatever that brought up, if you go deeper and deeper, yeah, whether it's a sense of abandonment, whether it's a sense that you can't trust anybody, whether it's a sense that nobody cares about you, whether it's a sense that people around you are lazy, are entitled, are selfish, are self-centered, are narcissistic, they take whatever it is that you'll talk to your therapist in detail, or to your wife, or to your shviga about what it's bringing up. But even the smallest inyan, right? You can't get a visa, you can't get a passport. You're having a hard time getting a job, your car broke down. You're struggling with a school, you're struggling with a shit, whatever it is. Kol chada from shordlei, big things and small things. But every nekuda, every experience in life is tuning into a frequency in the world. Right? This is the foundation of all emotional work. And finding that frequency is either post-tzimtzum or pre-tzimtzum. So every nekuda in tzimtzum is translated into every experience. Every experience that we're having, either it's from pre-tzimtzum or post-tzimtzum. Now you can understand that every experience that's rooted in pre-tzimtzum is going to be an experience of Ein Sof. That's where pure and infinite bliss comes from. That's pre-tzimtzum. Every experience of post-tzimtzum is already where the Ein Sof is completely concealed, and hence I'm on my own. I need to survive. Now in this itself, there's endless levels. Endless, literally, because post-tzimtzum, Atzilus is also post-tzimtzum, and Bria is also post-tzimtzum, and Yitzir is also post-tzimtzum, and even higher than Atzilus is post-tzimtzum. So even post-tzimtzum, you're talking about endless levels. But it's a frequency of post-tzimtzum. So by working through the tzimtzum, it's really another word in English of working through every experience in your life until there's alignment. So it comes the Maggid and teaches us that the whole nekuda of tzimtzum was, there should be alignment, there should be achdus. But it shouldn't be achdus in a way where you bypass your identity, but there should be achdus in a way that it's integrated, it's embodied. And that's why working through the tzimtzum is of critical importance, not just of critical, but that is the essence of all. Yeah, very good. Not sweeping the tzimtzum under the rug, but holding space for it with empathy, appreciating what it is, and of course, not sweeping pre-tzimtzum under the rug. Because that's the only thing that can hold the tzimtzum. That can hold space for the tzimtzum is pre-tzimtzum. Oh. So that's where the ultimate transformation happens. That when somebody really works through the tzimtzum, and they reach a place of tzimtzum shaloi kipshutai in their own soul, so they learn that there was never a tzimtzum kipshutai. So all the distress and pain was a perception that was based on a certain understanding and experience of life. So it transforms the past experiences too. And it even transforms the perception of the past experiences. It doesn't only transform the experience, it transforms what I went through from my perspective, because that's also part of the tzimtzum. And then there's a different level of healing. You understood the last point? If you experience it, that's Mashiach. That's the frequency of Mashiach. That's the Geula. That frequency is Geula. At least it's the beginning of it. It's the beginning of it. You know, it's not just those good things in the world. Avada. It's much deeper. The Rebbe used to always say, it says in Medrash, Geula is Goyla with an Aleph. It's interesting, you would think that the word for exile and the word for redemption should be different words in Hebrew. It's not, it's the same word. Goyla is exile. Gimel Vav Lamed Hey. What's Geula? Gimel Vav Lamed Hey. Really? Yeah, but there's an Aleph. You remember the Baal Shem Tov said it's about going back from the Tuf to the Aleph. The moment you get from the Tuf to the Aleph, you look at the Goyla, oh, that's Geula. So Geula is not, Mashiach flying down on a BMW or on a donkey from the heaven and distributing, free, uninhibited Kool-Aid to everybody. There'll be Kool-Aid also. It'll be healthy Kool-Aid, not food coloring. But the vart is, it's reality. It's Goyla with an Aleph. So what's the big deal? Who needs it? Oh, it's a big deal. The moment the Aleph comes into the Goyla, that's Geula. So Geula is not a different universe. Geula is re-experiencing the Goyla from the Aleph perspective. And it doesn't only transform the future, it transforms the past also. That's what we spoke last year about Akiva Nichamtanu, right? The end of Maseches Makkos, I told you the Rebbe made a siyum on Makkos at this Fabrengen. And the last part is that Akiva was laughing when he saw the foxes and they told him, Akiva Nichamtanu, because Akiva didn't talk about the future. They all believed that Mashiach is going to come, but they were still crying because now there's a fox coming from the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Rabbi Akiva was laughing now, even though he also did Kriya. It says in Harat Seifim, they were all there, they did Kriya. So he also tore his clothes, he understood what they understood. That's why he asked him, why are you crying? Because I know why I'm laughing, but I want that you're crying. I want you to understand that your crying is what's making me laugh. My laughter is not divorced from your tears. I'm not like living, as an angel in a spiritual spaceship in a different world and everything is sweet and dandy and beautiful. That's bypassing the Tzimtzum. And yeah, you have neshamas that attack higher souls, they never really land. Relative to our world, they're pre-Tzimtzum. When you say pre-Tzimtzum relative, it means not mamish pre-Tzimtzum. But relative to our world, it's a much higher level where there's less concealment. But that's not Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva was completely present. Fakert. Rabbi Akiva was a Ben Gerim. Rabbi Akiva came from non-Jews. Actually, the Rebbe said in Avart, he said only Rabbi Akiva can do this because he came from non-Jews. So he's the only one who could transform the Churban into Geula. Because he was completely present in that space. Yeah. What? Yeah. What? It says in Gemara and Sanhedrin, it says, I think Daf Tzadik Vav, Mibnei, it's not in all of our versions, but it's in many of the Nuschayas. Mibnei Banav Shal Sisra, Lamdu Toida B'Bnei Brak, or Manu Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva came from Sisra. Now Sisra was what arch enemy of the Jewish people. The story in Shoftim with Dvorah. Dvorah killed Sisra. She gave him milk and he fell asleep and she put the peg in his forehead. He was like the Hitler of the time. And the Gemara says in Maseches Nazir, Daf Chav Gimel, that the way that she got him so tired was Sheva Be'ilos. She had intimacy with him 7 times. And he impregnated her, and from that came Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Akiva came from the depths of darkness. The Rambam says that he was a Ben Gadim. His parents were Gadim. So that means Rabbi Akiva grew up in the house of non-Jews. Either they converted in his lifetime and he also converted, or they converted before his lifetime. But either way, his grandparents were not Jewish. His uncles and aunts were not Jewish. So you're talking here about, the Gemara says in Sanhedrin that in Pevav, Kulu al-Libid Rabbi Akiva, the whole Torah Shabbat Peh comes from Rabbi Akiva. His own Zayda wasn't Jewish. I don't know if Rabbi Akiva would have been taken into yeshiva these days. I don't know if his daughters would make it into seminary. That I don't know. Huh? And who would want to do a shidduch anyway? But it brings out a point. So Rabbi Akiva, the Rebbe said, he came from the Tachlis HaTzimtzum. So he's the one who could tell you the truth about Tzimtzum. Only him. Because he had to work it through it himself. He had to confront it. He couldn't bypass it. So he's the one who revealed to the other Tanaim, Ram Gamliel, Rabbi Yeshua, and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, the emes about the fox. Dvarim neflayim, amazing, unbelievable vart. Okay, so now, when we talk about this oir, that's Hayim Mali Kol HaMetzias. What's Mali Kol HaMetzias is beautiful words. It filled all Metzias. What does it mean it filled all Metzias? There was no Metzias. That's the point. Mali Kol HaMetzias means there was no Metzias outside of Ein Sof. That's what it filled all of Metzias. It doesn't mean there was a drawer and Ein Sof filled the whole drawer. There was a big house, there was a big empty world, and Ein Sof filled the whole world. That's not what Arizal is saying. Kol HaMetzias means the concept of reality. Metzias is reality. Motzui, Metzius, it is. Metzius means existence. Motzui, right? Motzui. So in Malas Kol HaMetzias, the very notion of existence was Ein Sof. There was no notion, there was no concept, there was no experience of existence on any level. Not with your mind, not with your heart. There was also no mind and heart. That's the point. There was nothing outside of Ein Sof. They say, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. I know, because I'm post-Tzimtzum. Of course I don't know what that means. That's why I'm giving it, that's why we're learning about it. If we were pre-Tzimtzum, we wouldn't learn about it. So that's Ein Sof Maliyas Kol HaMetzias. The words of the Arizal are so powerful. The whole Metzias was filled by Ein Sof. Now, when you say filled right away, it means two things. You say the tissue box is filled with tissues, and the cup is filled. When we say filled right away, it means two things. But that's only in physicality. When you're talking in the spirituality, when you say something is filling something else, it doesn't mean there is something and it's filled by something else. It means that is the whole reality of it. We use the word filled because that's the word we use, because we live in that world of polarity. Yeah. You understood what I just said? So Ein Sof Maliyas Kol HaMetzias means there was no definition of the word Metzias outside of Ein Sof. It's not that there's Metzias, but Metzias knows that there's Ein Sof. That's not Maliyas Kol HaMetzias. Maliyas Kol HaMetzias means he puts it over there. He says, Lo haya makom lamidas elmas. There was no space for Metzias. That is Metzias. Even the word existence didn't apply. Because the word existence, as spiritual as it is, means existence. Now the question is, what exists? I exist, you exist, the universe doesn't exist. We think we exist in the matrix, we exist in our mind, we exist in your mind, we exist in God's mind. I think, therefore I am, therefore I think. You could drive yourself crazy. But the very definition of existence, there was nothing outside of Ein Sof. What's Ein Sof? The pure expression of Ein Sof. That's the pre-Tzimtzum reality. And this is all in Oir, And then comes the Tzimtzum and makes some change in this. It's not anymore Oir Elyon Maliyas Kol HaMetzias. The Arizal says the Oir is withdrawn. An empty circle is created. A vacuum, a cholo, a vacuum is created. And the Oir is now encircling the vacuum. That vacuum, that makam pani, he calls it makam pani, a vacant space. He calls it chalal, an empty space and a vacant space, is now devoid of the Oir Ein Sof. And suddenly there is Metzias outside of Ein Sof. And then the Arizal says, he takes a kav, he takes a little line and thread from that Oir, and he brings it back into the empty circle. And from there begins the whole process of creation. From highest to lowest, all the way down to the lowest levels. What does this mean? Since you're talking about real Ein Sof, meaning true Ein Sof, so it's not a joke. Ein Sof means endless. So there's no descriptions, there's no limitations there. If it's Ein Sof, meaning it's an Oir of Ein Sof, it's the Oir that itself is Ein Sof, because it manifests Ein Sof. So there's no descriptions, there's no limitations. So you need to say that this light has both the capacity for finiteness and the capacity for infiniteness, for infinity. If it's Ein Sof, it means it doesn't have to be Ein Sof. If it's true Ein Sof, it doesn't have to be limited by the fact that it's Ein Sof. It can also be finite. If it's truly infinite, so then it's unlimited also by the need of being unlimited. being unlimited is also a description. You're infinite, you're everything, you're everywhere. That's what he's saying. But if it's be'emes ein sof, so don't give me any names. Don't tell me I'm infinite. Maybe I don't want to be infinite. Maybe I want to be limited. Yet we all know, even in a person, the greater a teacher is, how do you know a teacher is really, really great? Not that nobody understands his class, that everybody understands his class. You have geniuses that nobody understands a word they're saying. Then you have real geniuses that everybody understands what they're saying, or at least everybody thinks they understand what he's saying. You understand the difference? Rav Shlomo Yosef Zevin says that Rokachover, when you read his Torah, almost nobody understands it. He says when he spoke, a 5-year-old understood. A 5-year-old understood. Rav Zevin writes this in Ishim B'Shittis. The greatest Gon is the one that can be extremely limited. In other words, I'm just giving a little mashal. When he says Oirin Sof Be'emes, it means it doesn't have to be unlimited. Unlimited is also a term. It could be limited. So there's Oira Gvul and there's Oira Bli Gvul. Hainu, Heina Oir Shenoisen Makam L'Metzias, Ve'ena Oir She'ena Noisen Makam L'Metzias Eilamas. In Oir Ein Sof, there was two things. There's the Oir that gives room for Metzias, and there's the Oir that doesn't give room for Metzias. Don't say Oir Ein Sof is limited by the fact that it has to exclude the world. That's also a limit. There's also if it's infinite, there's also the capacity to be finite. That's what real infinity means. In other words, infinity can also be a trap. Just, all right? You understand what I'm saying? It's gewaldige Wort. Real Ein Sof means, stop calling me Ein Sof. We get caught up. It's infinite, it's everywhere. Maybe not. It could be Ein Sof. It could also be not Ein Sof. So, if it's really Ein Sof, so why does it have to be Mamalias Kol HaMetzias? Maybe it's not Mamalias Kol HaMetzias. If Hashem could manifest himself as being finite, I have space for others. I don't have to. That's what he says. There's the ocean noisen makam l'metzias. Segit an art. It gives space for metzias. And there's the earth that doesn't give makam. Umawatam shoya gileid and soif boyfriend shoya oidel in pasha malis kol metzias loina sinas makam l'metzias olamas. So mehecha teisa. Where did Arizal come up with the idea that when the Oir Ein Sof is revealed, it has to be in a way that it fills the whole metzias and there's no room for anything else? Why not? If it's real Oir Ein Sof, yeah. Stop putting names and limitations and titles, and if he wants to express himself in a finite way so there is room for other realities, so there is room. It's very impressive to us that it's infinite. But he says, but that's impressive with a definition. An amazing definition. We're not minimizing being Ein Sof. He's not minimizing it. But he's saying, if it's really Ein Sof, go a step deeper. Stop making the limits that it has to be unlimited. So he's challenging the very words of the Arizal. Oir Ein Sof Mamalias Kol HaMetzias. No, Oir Ein Sof could be Mamalias Kol HaMetzias. It could be not Mamalias Kol HaMetzias. So you know what? We're not gonna. My Ein Sof is going to express itself in being limited today. There's room for you. There's room for you. There's room for you. Well, you don't need a Tzimtzum. This is all based that you need a Tzimtzum. You don't need a Tzimtzum. The Oir itself has the koyach of gvul, has the koyach of bli gvul, has the koyach of infinity, has the koyach of finite. That is part of being bli gvul. Part of being Ein Sof means don't give it any descriptions. So the Rebbe says, that's why in the original Basi Legani of the Rebbe Rayatz, he adds a few words. When he quotes the Arizal, he adds something. He says, to understand the inyan of Tzimtzum, the Isa ba'avodas HaKodesh. One of the big svarim of Kabbalah is a sefer called Avodas HaKodesh. It's a fundamental sefer. Kabbalah was written by a Jew named Reb Meir ben Gabbai. He lived in the 15th century, in the 1400s, in Spain. And he wrote a sefer called Avodas HaKodesh. Over there he has a line, Avodas HaKodesh, in Chelet, first section, Perek Ches, Ha'ein Sof baruch hu kashem sheyesh lekoyach bebli gvul, kamoken yesh lekoyach begvul. Im temei sheyesh lekoyach bebli gvul ve'en lekoyach begvul, harei ata mechaser shleimusa, ve'ein Sof hu shleimusa dekula. The Ein Sof, just as he has the capacity to be infinite, he also has the capacity to be finite. Because if you say he only has the capacity to be infinite, and he doesn't have the capacity to be finite, you are limiting his perfection. You're being mechaser shleimusa. Mechaser shleimusa means you're creating a flaw, a void in his shleimus. And Ein Sof is the shleimus of everything. So this is the gewaldike words of the Avodas HaKodesh. And he lived actually before the Arizal. The Arizal passed away in 1572. He lived earlier than Arizal. He doesn't speak about the Tzimtzum. He just says, when you speak about the Ein Sof, don't think that you have to use the word Ein Sof. Ein Sof can also be a limit. He could be Bli Gvul, but he can also be Gvul. And at the same time, yeah. and it's really one thing. We say two things again because vocabulary puts limits on things. We speak about things by describing them. If we don't describe them, we can't talk. Every word is another description. That's what we learned from the Baal Shem Tov. Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim ve'es haaretz. Creation created the letters for heaven and the letters of earth, the description of heaven and earth. So we speak in descriptions. We don't have another choice. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu said, I'm not a man of words. The Alter Rebbe says, what's the problem? So we say, because he stuttered. He couldn't speak well. Some say he didn't know Egyptian. The Even HaEzer says he did. Some unfortunately he didn't have a good vocabulary. Like the Hasidim speak English. It's hard. They're not going to give a speech in English. You know, half the words in English, 90% are in Yiddish. Yeah, gei chaparayid. The Alter Rebbe says it's much deeper. I'm not a man of words means what I want, what I am can't be contained in words. So we in our vocabulary we have a duality, but in essence it's really one thing. So the shleimus of Ein Sof includes two things: infinity and finiteness. Bli gvul means no limit, and gvul means a limit, and that's all Ein Sof. So why do we use the word Ein Sof? Because that's what really Ein Sof means. Ein Sof, he says, don't get caught in the word Ein Sof. The description Ein Sof means unlimited, but really Ein Sof means unlimited by anything, including by being unlimited. And as I said before, and this is it's somewhat of a good mashal for it, even though obviously it's a very relative metaphor.
But can you just repeat what you said? Because it seems to me that was like a massive point.
You think I remember?
The unlimited.
That the Avodas HaKodesh is teaching us that it's really one truth, and that's the truth of Ein Sof. Ein Sof, true Ein Sof, is infinity. But what does that mean? So don't get stuck in the word infinity. Understand that the shleimus of Ein Sof means it's infinite, and because it's infinite, it's also not limited by being infinite. So it can also express itself in a very finite way. And as I gave you the mashal, right? You can have a master teacher who's a genius, and he's now speaking to 5-year-old kids, or 10-year-old kids, or maybe adults, but relative to his knowledge, they're completely on a different level. So he could speak in a way where he just expresses his genius and everybody says it went way over my head. But the greatest of minds can limit their expression to the point that it's custom made and filtered, that the child can take it in and really understand it and even go home entertained. In other words, give it in a way that is completely accustomed and accommodates the capacity and the vessels of the recipient. That's not a smallness, that's a greatness. That's a godless. Some people are limited by their unlimitedness. You know, they're just up there and they don't know how to come down. It's just a little metaphor, but I'm just trying to bring out what the Avodas HaKodesh says. Don't be mechaser shleimusa. Shleimus of Ein Sof means it's shleimusa de kula. It's the shleimus of everything. So it could be infinite, it could be finite. Don't give it names, don't give it titles. So why is that? So this is a question on the Arizal. Back to our question. So why does Arizal say Ein Sof excluded the Metzius of Olamus? That's also a limitation. You don't have to exclude. So he explains in the Maimer, Mikol Makoim, Lefnei HaTzimtzum, Haya Gilui Ein Sof HaBli Gvul. V'koyach HaGvul Shebein Sof Haya Behelem. V'zeh Oimrei Haya Oir Elyon Posher, Shal Ein Sof HaBli Gvul Mamale Kol HaMetzias. Kol Makom HaMetzias Shaya Nirgish Hak B'chinas Ein Sof HaBli Gvul. V'koyach HaGvul Shebein Sof Shal B'chinas HaMetzias V'yashes Lo Haya Nirgish Klal. V'hainu shekasher oid habli gvul hu begilui lo nirgish oid hagvul da'af sheyeshne oid hagvul mekol makom einei nirgish u'ma shenirgish hu raka oid habli gvul o b'meilei makom l'metzias ha'olamas. So the Rebbe explains, this is what the Maimon is trying to explain, this Nakuda. And that is, of course, before Tzimtzum, you have the Oid Ein Sof Habli Gvul, and that includes also the Oid HaGvul. In other words, you have the Oid that gives space for the worlds, and you have the Oid that doesn't give space for the worlds. But as he puts it, because there was the Gilui of Oid Ein Sof, because there was the revelation of infinity, so even the Koyach HaGvul was part of Bli Gvul. So the Koyach HaGvul in the Ein Sof was concealed by being part of the Koyach HaBli Gvul. That's what when the Arizal says Oir Elyon Pashut, we thought he means the Oir HaBli Gvul didn't give room for the Metzias. He says there was also Oir HaGvul. So he says what the Arizal means is Oir Elyon Pashut. What was felt pre-Tzimtzum is only the Oir HaBli Gvul. The Koyach HaGvul, which is the Metzias and Yeshus, couldn't be felt because whenever Oir Ein Sof HaBli Gvul is revealed, the Oir HaGvul is not felt as separate. It's just felt as part of Bli Gvul. So even though it's there, but it's not experienced as finite because it's part of infinity. So in Mela there can't be room for the worlds which experience their finiteness as separate from infinity. So the finiteness, the way it's pre-Tzimtzum, of course there's finiteness and there's room for the worlds. But when it's pre-Tzimtzum, it's all part of Ein Sof. If it's part of Ein Sof, that's not the world that we're experiencing. We don't experience a world that's finite as part of infinity. We experience a world that's finite. When you're stuck in your bubble, it's not like my bubble is part of infinity. No, it's not. It's a bubble. Huh? It's Gvul. Pre-Tzimtzum, of course there's Gvul. We're not limiting there. It's not what that Rizal means. But over there, the Gvul is an uptight and Bli Gvul. The Gvul is a din, to use yeshivish language. The Gvul is a din in Bli Gvul. The Gvul is a chelik of Ein Sof. Oh, that's already a different Gvul. That's what it means. Not because the Ur doesn't give room for Metzias Olamas, it does. But Metzias is where you experience Gvul as divorced from Bli Gvul. So what was the Tzimtzum? He completely withdrew his light. Completely. Creating an empty space. What does it mean, an empty space? Empty from what? Empty from light. There's no his galus at all in the cholol. One second. And then into the empty space he brought in a kav kotzer, a short and thin line, metaphorically speaking, from which was afterwards created the whole Metzias and reality, the creation and the reality of the worlds. Your Teufels Dinyan he's saying here. He asked, L'chayra Pri Tzimtzum, you also have the Oir HaGvul. He says, of course you do. And mitzad the Oir HaGvul, there's a room for the worlds. There's room for the worlds. Ein Chanami, there is. So what do you need the Tzimtzum? Why are you saying the Oir Elyon excluded Metzias of Olamas? The Oir Elyon includes the Oir HaGvul, and it could be Olamas. The answer to this is, of course everything was there, including the Oir HaGvul. But because the Oir HaBli Gvul was felt, so the Oir HaGvul is just an expression of infinity. That's what it is. It's not a separate reality. So therefore it's not felt as finite in and of itself. Its limitedness, how it expresses infinity. It's an expression of the shleimus of Ein Sof. And the shleimus of Ein Sof comes in Bli Gvul and Gvul. So as you would say, Achen Vei, Oich Mir HaGvul. Oich Mir HaGvul. It's like, you understand, the moment you crack the code of Pri Tzimtzum, what Gvul is it? Yeah, of course it's Gvul. But what is really, it's shleimus of Ein Sof. That's not the world we're talking about. That world you can have, that world you had, no problem. I don't know if I have no problem. That type of yeshus, that type of metzius, that type of existence, which is nothing but a manifestation of the shleimus of Ein Sof, that you had pre-Tzimtzum. So what do you need the Tzimtzum for? Because our experience of finiteness is finiteness as finite. You know, not as infinite. You know how sometimes, just to bring it down, sometimes a person finds themselves in a state of confusion or darkness or chaos or just despair or blindness or negativity. And what's the hardest thing about it? The hardest thing about it is you don't see the edges of it. It's all consuming. You know what I'm talking about? Some of you know what I'm talking about. When you find yourself in the abyss, it's not like you say, okay, this abyss is like, it's a bird, like the Gemara says, it's a bird, I'm in a pit, but it ends after 10 tfachim. It's daled, it's daled tfachim wide. Fine. That's not the bird we experience. That bird is a bird. It has edges. But there's a world outside of the bird. When we're in a bird, it's infinite. You understand? It's infinite. There's nothing else. So that's what it means to be in the abyss. To be in the abyss doesn't mean there's edges. When there's edges, you're good. Huh? It's a bird that feels like Ein Sof. That's what he's saying. It's not a gvul that feels like part of Bli Gvul. Okay. It's a gvul that feels like gvul. You're completely separate. For that you need a tzimtzum. As long as the oir was present, of course there was oir hagvul. What type of oir hagvul is? It's an oir hagvul that's expressing oir ha-Bli Gvul. Gvul and Bli Gvul are the same thing. It's all part of Ein Sof. So when the Rizal says he needed a tzimtzum, it's not because there was no gvul before. There was a gvul, but the gvul was subsumed in Bli Gvul. It was a din in Bli Gvul. It was a din in Ein Sof. It was an expression of Ein Sof. Ein Sof is Bli Gvul. Ein Sof is gvul. So the whole gvul is just a heichetimtz in Ein Sof. There was no space for a metzias of oilamus, where finiteness is a true, powerful perception of reality. It's the fabric of our reality. There's a sense of abandonment. There's a sense of aloneness. There's a fear of abandonment. There's a sense of real brokenness. For this, the oir ha-Bli Gvul can't be present in experience. That's the siluk, that's the tzimtzum. It's completely gone. We're going to see what we mean by gone. But the words of the Arizal is, silek es oirev letzad. He took the oir Ein Sof, the Bli Gvul, and he got rid of it. Now the oir ha-Bli Gvul is on its own. The oir ha-Gvul, The oir ha-Gvul is, so to speak, separate from the oir ha-Bli Gvul. Yeah. Now it could be felt as Gvul. When the oir ha-Bli Gvul was present in your experience, okay. Again, I'm gonna talk. I always say that when Yosef told his brothers, "You didn't sell me; God sent me, and therefore I'm not upset, I'm not depressed, I'm not angry." What did he mean by that? What he meant by that was that his oir ha-Gvul was a chelik of his oir ha-Bli Gvul. I want you to hear this. He was a shliach. If he was a shliach, he was never in real darkness. He was sent there. Infinity was sent there. So the finiteness is not finite, it's infinite. You understand the difference? That's pre-Tzimtzum. When a soldier is sent into battle, yeah? I was last Shabbos with 12 soldiers on a retreat for PTSD. They came for PTSD. Yeah. So one of them was in Syria before the revolution, and in Gaza and in Lebanon. So he tasted, all three Malav Malchus. Death on three fronts with the worst of the enemies. And he's suffering from it. But there was never a moment where he said, I was sent here because, they don't like me. Because I was a bad boy. He knew, no, I was sent here because I'm a good soldier. He's actually a commander. He has 600 soldiers under him. He didn't think he was sent because he's inadequate. He was sent because he's adequate. When you go into darkness as a shliach, you know you were sent here. You're not part of the darkness. You're the solution. You're not the problem. When the Oira Gvul is part of the Oira Bli Gvul, it's not limited. It's limited, but it's limited as an expression of Ein Sof. So Yosef tells his brothers, actually, I'm in a very good place. What do you mean? You're in a good place? You were abandoned. You were thrown out. He says, no, you got it wrong. I was a shliach. I wasn't abandoned. Shluchis Adam Kamaisai. When you could feel your infinity, and your infinity is going for a tour into dark places, yeah, our blood circulates, has to bring oxygen and nutrients to every part of the body. So the blood leaves the heart, and the blood goes all the way down to the pinky, to the toe. The blood goes, oh, what are you doing to me? Why are you punishing me? Why are you sending me away from the heart? I need the heart. The blood needs the heart, and the blood needs the lungs. It needs to be oxygenated. The blood knows it's a shliach. Don't worry. It's not. You're just bringing the light to the toes. You get it? And then you come back. That's what shlichus means. Shlichus means that the Oira Bli Gvul is a chelik of Ein Sof. Then you're good. Because then you're not finite. You are finite, but you're not finite. You're just infinity having a finite experience in order to transform the finite. That's how pre-Tzimtzum reality is experienced in post-Tzimtzum. That's what Yosef says. The challenge is, but that's not our world. Our world is where there is abandonment. There is a feeling of abandonment. For this, you need Tzimtzum. This is what Tzimtzum means. Tzimtzum means that the Gvul doesn't feel that it's Ein Sof. So for this, Darizal says there was a complete siluk. The oil was completely removed. What says removed? We'll soon see what means removed. It's not kipshuta, but we're building up. Removed means that in the chalal, in the empty space, we call it empty. What's that empty? Why empty? What God can't be limited? God's oil has to go away. What Hashem can't deal with a world, His oil has to disappear. He says, no. Chalal amakam pani means you don't feel the Oira Bli Gvul anymore. Once you don't feel the Oira Bli Gvul, so now the Gvul is Gvul. So now what do you feel? Empty. You toif is the Vart. That's the Vart of the Arizal. Of course there was Oira Gvul before, but over there the Oira Gvul was all. Yeah. The Gvul was Gvulless. The finite was just another expression of infinity. So it allows for Metzias. It's true, it allows for what type of Metzias? A Metzias that expresses the capacity of Ein Sof to be finite. Okay, beautiful. Eichmer finite. Was once a Fabrengen, it was Simchas Beis HaShevet Avshin Chavdalan. So the Rebbe was speaking about the tshuva that when the Jews came back after Churban Bayis Rishon for Bayis Sheni, the Chiddush was Avodas HaTshuva. They came back, they rehabilitated themselves after the Churban. And he says that's why it says in the Chemia that the Simcha of Sukkot, when they came back to Eretz Yisrael, was Vatihiyah Simcha G'doyla Ad Moed. There was never such a Simcha from Yeshua ben Nun. So he explained because Sukkot is the Avodah of Tshuva after the Shoshana and Yom Kippur, and that was Dafka Bayis Sheni. So the Gemara asks him, Maseches Erkin, why does the Pasuk say that L'chayra David also made Sukkot? David HaMelech also made Sukkot. So he gives a whole answer, Kedusha Shniya, Kitshel L'shaita, Kitshel Osed Lava. But the Rebbe explained that Al Pi Pnimi is what the question of the Gemara is, David was also about Tshuva. Why do you have to wait for Bayis Sheni to do Tshuva? David was also about Tshuva. So the answer is, the Gemara says, Lo Yahaya David Roi Lo Isamaisa. David wasn't Shayach to fall with Bathsheba. It wasn't Shayach to. So why did it happen? Lo Hoydes Derech LeBali Tshuva. David wanted to create a precedent for Bali Tshuva. That even people who fall down very low, they shouldn't think they're hopeless because they have David HaMelech. David, look at David. He went down to the abyss. He rehabilitated himself. You can also do it. So the Rebbe said like this: when somebody sins in order to show a derech for Bali Tshuva, yeah, yena oizen hata aveda, yena oizen hata Tshuva. So then that aveda, he says, ich bin an aveda. You understand? When you're falling, in other words, to be able to give hope to other people, that's a different type of fall. It's a different type. In other words, you see the edges around the bar. You're going into this place in order to achieve something. You're in full consciousness. You didn't lose yourself. You understand? It's a different Inyan. At the surface, it looks the same. David sins and I sin, you know. David Melchisol Chai V'Kayim. Yeah, it's a connection to the beginning of the Shir. David sins and ich zindik, right? I was once talking Friday night in Shul to Rabbi Yael Khan. So I told him that I heard a psashir from somebody who said, you think that this and this tzaddik, didn't speak Lashon Hara? No, he spoke, and he's failed, and he stumbled, and then he did tshuva. And that's what it means. It doesn't mean a tzaddik never speaks Lashon Hara. He speaks, and he fails, and he learns his lesson, and he works it out. So the Biel didn't like it. He says, you understand, the motivation behind this initiative is to say that I'm on the same level. Because at least the sin we share. Okay, he did tshuva, I'll also do tshuva. But the truth is, it's a powerful lesson sometimes. But sometimes you have to understand, no, there's a different madrega. It's a different inyan. It's not the same sin. Moshe Rabbeinu's sin of hitting the rock is not my moment of weakness where I lost the plot. Moshe Rabbeinu and David HaMelech do these things in order to give hope, emes. But it's a different inyan. It's l'michya shlachani alekim lefneichem. So the Rebbe said that's why the tshuva of David HaMelech is not real tshuva. It's all part of an experiment. By his sheni, there had to be real tshuva. There was real avodah zarah, real gilui arayos, real shvichas dam. Yitayfus devart. This is all illustrating how oid ha-gvul, when it's part of bli gvul, it's nishkin gvul. It is gvul. It has all the David HaMelech sin, looks just like anybody else's sin, but it's completely different. It's a whole different inyan. It's a different inyan. Just a little memory, and it just popped into my head, so I'll say it. The Rebbe at the beginning of Fabrengens, he would make Shabbos. He would drink wine, make kiddush, and then eat a little mezainis. So the Rebbe didn't have teeth in later years, so they had like marble cake, sponge cake, marble. It was marble cake, but very soft. To eat a kazayis, you have to eat a lot, You have to eat a kazayis b'chtei achilas pras because he made a bracha achron after. So it was one of the times you could see that he was eating in public. Very rare that you could see it. But in the beginning of a Shabbos Fabrengen, you could see. So when you looked at it, I saw that Rebbe like eating cake, and he put in quite a lot because he wanted it, and it was hard. It wasn't easy for him to get it down because Mamash he had one tooth and then it fell out, so there was no teeth. So on one hand, you could see a person eating cake. You could see. But on the other hand, if you were sensitive, you could see that it's a different experience of eating. Like the whole relationship we have with food is, the food owns us much more than we own the food. I don't have to explain it to you. At least I could speak for myself, especially if it's a good piece of cake. I don't know that it was a good piece of cake. I don't know. Oh, I actually did taste it a few times at the end. When I was a kid, I used to take at the end. But it was very good cake. Marble cake. But you can see somebody's eating, and when you're eating, you're not eating, but it's a different experience of eating. So two people could be doing the same thing, but it's a completely different reality. So that's all a dugma. That's what Yosef is saying. I was a shliach. I wasn't a victim of you. I wasn't sold. I was sent. I never lost the plot. What do you mean? You're in a pit. This is gvul. You're in a pit. It's not a pit. It's a shlichus. You typhus? It's a hafladik evart. There was one of the hostages that was released a few months ago. Her name is Sapir Cohen. Sapir Cohen. Incredible girl. 27 years old, I think. So she traveled to America and she shared some of her stories. So I heard one of the speeches on video. And actually, I think I met her somewhere on a Shabbos, I forgot, but she shared her story. She shared one detail. And that is that she was, imagine a person should say this. It's completely, I can't even say I was awestruck, it's beyond. She says at some point, I decided that I'm a shliach of Hashem to Gaza. And Hamas has no control over me, even though they have control over me 24/7. They could kill me at any second. They can torture me, whatever they did to her. But I realized I'm a shliach, and my shlichus is to help other hostages keep up their spirits. And she said, that's what I did. And she spoke about a little girl who she saved and encouraged, and she stole pita for a girl who was starving. Incredible stories. But she says at one point, listen to this. She saw her Hamas captor, Yamach Shemoy V'Zichloi, writing her name on a piece of paper and drawing a yahrzeit candle. Her name, and he draws a candle. So she understood, what does this mean? Basically, she'll be killed one of these days, and he's, lighting a candle for her soul. So she got overwhelmed from fear, and she turned to him and said, "What's this? I thought we were friends." Because she was very smart. She was very brilliant how she dealt with these people. Why are you doing this? He says, what's the problem? She says, why are you making a candle with my name? He says, I'll tell you why. I hate you. I'm supposed to hate you. You're a Jew. I'm Hamas. I hate you. I'm supposed to hate you. But I have to admit one thing. As long as you're here, you bring light to this place. That's why I made a candle. She thought it was a yahrzeit candle. He was saying, you bring light to this place. He said, I have to admit, I hate you. I have to hate you. But as long as you're here, you bring light to this place. And she heard this from a Hamas captor. So you understand, he wasn't trying to flatter her. It was such a light that even a Reitzeach, a barbaric, sadistic, low-life terrorist working for Hamas, Yamach Shemam V'Zichram, couldn't help himself but say that as long as you're here in this Gehenna, you're bringing light to this place. Which part of him said this? How did he know about her light? When he's there with a gun waiting to kill. I don't know. I don't have an explanation for it. I'm just telling you a story that she shared. Huh? That even he almost couldn't help himself. He said, I hate you and I have to hate you. There's a mitzvah to hate you. You're a Jew, you're the devil, right? We're here to kill you, to murder you. Huh? He couldn't help himself. This is a gili from pre-Tzimtzum. I don't even have the oisius for it. And she was typhus. She was like, wow. So that's the Nakuda here. So what did the Tzimtzum accomplish? I don't know if the word is accomplish. The Tzimtzum created a gulf between the Oid HaBligvul and the Oid HaGvul. The Oid HaBligvul had to be removed completely. Now Oid HaGvul is on its own, so to speak. What does it mean it's on its own? It's recognizable as an independent entity. So what does that look like? I'm a finite creature. That's what it will ultimately look like in our world. Again, post-Tzimtzum, there's infinite realities, but that's what it's ultimately going to look like. There's going to be a source of real abandonment, at least in its own perception. Of course, we're soon going to learn that the Tzimtzum shall like pshuta, but as Sapir Cohen taught the whole world. But that's the word here. And then he brings in a kav from the Oid HaBligvul, he brings a kav into the empty space, and from there starts the creation of the worlds. But first there's a challah, there's a makom panei. What says empty? Why do you need an empty space? What's wrong with the Oid HaGvul? That was the kasha. He says nothing wrong with the Oid HaGvul. The Oid HaGvul is great. But when the Oid HaGvul is pre-Tzimtzum, and the Oid HaBligvul is felt, then the Oid HaGvul is just an experience of that. It's not Gvul as separate. Kaprenda. Huh? And that's a kav dak v'kotzer. The gvul, that the light that now comes in, has to be a kav, meaning it also has to go through. It has to become a line. In other words, you can't bring back the Oid HaBligvul as it was, because then you're undoing the Tzimtzum. So he takes a kav from that Oid HaBligvul and brings that into the challah. So this is why the Maimer adds this word to explain the words of the Arizal. Why Oidin Soif Mamali is Kol HaMetzias, and there was no Makom for Metzias, even though there was a Makom for Metzias. But Metzias, the way we understand it, couldn't be, because pre-Tzimtzum there's Oid HaGvul, but what's nirgish over there, what's felt is Oid HaBligvul. So that's why an empty space has to be created. What's an empty space? Empty space means literally you're alone. There's a void. The reason you could feel a void in the world, the reason we could feel an emptiness, that's the chalal. That's the makam pana. So I want you to understand this. Whenever you feel an emptiness and a void, especially those moments when you feel a deep void, what are you experiencing? You're experiencing the tzimtzum. You're experiencing the makam pana. It's literally a picture of the makam pana. The Herst, whenever you're experiencing a void in life, that is the makam pana. That's what it is. You'll say, stop trivializing the makam pana so much. Really, my little void? Yeah, you're a little void. You're a little void. Huh? Yeah. Now the question is, what do you do with this void? So essentially, this is the whole mind. What do you do with that void? That void that we experience, and especially the sensitive people who experience it much more because they're more sensitive. Remember, the more sensitive you are, the more you experience the tzimtzum. People say, I have this void that's so deep. That's a beautiful thing. Because that void is the tzimtzum. The reason you're feeling that void is because you're feeling the tzimtzum. If you're feeling the tzimtzum, it means you're rooted in pre-tzimtzum. Remember, if you were created in that void, you wouldn't feel a void. You know, if you're born in the void, that is you. The reason you're experiencing a void, something is missing, is because you know that something is missing. That means you're rooted in a pre-tzimtzum reality. So the fact that you're filling that void, that itself is good news. You're filling. Good. You're feeling the void already means that there's a filling in the void. Because you feel that there's a void. Right, the Baal Shem Tov used to say, "V'anoichi haster aster." The real concealment is when the concealment is concealed. When the concealment is not concealed, meaning you're feeling a void, it's dark. Baruch Hashem. Thank God you're not saying it's light. Now the question is, how do you fill the void? So the first answer is you have to feel the void in order to fill the void. Don't run away from the void. You have to feel the void in order to fill the void. Feel as F-E-E-L in order to go to F-I-L-L. Because if you don't fill the void, it's not going with the word. Because if you don't fill the void, you know what's going to happen. You're going to fill it by not filling it, by distracting yourself from the void. And that's what we do so well. We distract ourselves from the void. How do I distract myself from the void? Baruch Hashem and Elam Hazeh, there's enough stuff you can do for 90 years. Ad Zebula Basi is enough distraction. And distractions, by the way, doesn't mean necessarily phone and drugs and alcohol and gambling. That too. But distractions can be very, very subtle. Anger is a distraction. Resentment, frustration, hatred, jealousy, fanaticism, religious fanaticism, it's all distractions. Everything can be a distraction. Even holy things can become a distraction. Only when you feel the void, now you could say, so now how do I fill the void? Not distract myself from the void, which means create a deeper void. You typhus? So in filling this void, there's a lot of stages. And that's the whole beard here. One thing is understanding that Tzimtzum is shaloi kipshutah. In other words, in this void, you have all the light. And then the end of the mimer is going to go even deeper. That the void itself is a manifestation of that which is the source of the light, which is completely not defined by light at all. Okay, but let's not jump ahead of ourselves. But that's the key question. How do you fill the void? What do you do with this void? But we just learned that this is the void we're talking about. Now, some people might say, come on, you just took the whole Tzimtzum, which is one of the greatest secrets of Kabbalah, and basically you're reducing it to my little void that I'm having on Wednesday morning or Wednesday afternoon, Yeshakayach. So yeah, I understand that the Tzimtzum is not reduced to my void and your void. But the moment we divorce our voids from the Tzimtzum, we're betraying the whole Chassidus. As the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, Perek Lamala, V'hinei Hashem nitzav alav. Malay chalaretz kvoide, umabit alav, uvoichi klois, v'levim oiv de karoi. Right? Hashem is standing near you, and He's looking at you, and He's cheering you on. Like a mother who's watching her child make that first roll over the first time. It's like, wow, Yankee rolled over, Dveri rolled over, and she writes it down in her diary, right? They usually do it for the first 2 kids. Afterwards, you're on your own, you know? Huh? Yeah. Invite me to the bar mitzvah. But the first 2 kids, Yankee rolled over. If you're number 9, you know, good luck. Yeah. Number 3 is already post Tzimtzum. Usually 1 and 2 can also be post Tzimtzum if the parents are not worked out. So every void in the world is rooted in Tzimtzum. Every void in the world. There's no void that's not rooted in Tzimtzum. Yeah. The blessing is if you relate it to the Tzimtzum. If you start relating it to other things, then you're going to look for other solutions. And they're not going to satisfy you. And that's what we do. That's part of the Tzimtzum. Part of the Tzimtzum is that we don't know that the void is the Tzimtzum. We think the void is something else. That's what I told you, I think, a few classes. I don't remember if it was the 2nd or 3rd class, maybe the 5th class. I think the 5th class, we spoke about a lot about this. You know, that at the end of the day, where all healing comes to is when you realize that what you're really missing is you're missing Hashem. Your soul and your body are missing Hashem. That's it. And that's what the Maggid revealed. The half is missing the other half. It's like you're cut into 2 chas v'shalom, and you're missing your second half. You're missing Hashem. Now it sounds simple, really. For this, I had to go through everything. You know, I had to go through all these journeys and go through just to tell this to me. Yeah, because sometimes to get back to the most basic, simple truth, we have to go through all of our sophisticated, brilliant journeys to go back to the simplicity of you were missing Hashem. You're like, really? It sounds like simple. Yeah. That's what you were missing. You were missing real dveikus. You were missing, we're created in the post-void reality, or at least the perception of a void. Okay, so we're going to take a break here. And Be'ezer Hashem will continue tomorrow morning, 7:45 a.m., same place. And everybody have a beautiful day and a meaningful day and an inspiring day. And a day in which we know how to fill our voids, not by distracting ourselves from them, but by truly filling them. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Divrei Elokim Chayim. Nu, was Teufels gewähnt, the minion.
Even Yosef only realized it after everything. So we all go.
Of course. The example of Yosef is an example for all of us.
But beforehand, nobody knows.
The moment we realize the Aleph and the Geula, that's Geula.
So how do we go through?
And then retroactively, Lemafrei, everything changes.
Rebbe,
No, this I'll take.
We're our own light.
Oh, you know what? I attack
the other one?
somebody changed with me, yeah.
No, it was this one.
It has writing on it. The first pages have a lot of writing.
No, that one was the last one. See the edges. A little bit,
Aleichem shalom, bruchim abayim, bruchim animtzayim.
Essentially, we're our own light.
Welcome back, everybody, huh?
Essentially, we're our own light.
That's what we figure out. We are our own greatest source of light because we're not separate from the ultimate source. When we're not separate from the ultimate source, then we are our own greatest source of light. But the chiddush post-creation is that it's worked through the tzimtzum. Azafta, chashavti shata silakta et ha'or. עכשיו אני רואה שזה צמצום שלא כפשוטו. עכשיו אני רואה שזה צמצום שלא כפשוטו. Huh? Yeah. Yeah.
Is this your handwriting?
Yeah. Yeah.
His
Yeah.
handwriting. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah. 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 The whole tzimtzum was to create that the Oid HaGvul should be able to have its own yichus, its own chshivas. Because before tzimtzum, in the space of pre-tzimtzum, the Oid HaGvul is not nirgish as gvul. Because the moment bli gvul is fell, the moment you experience bli gvul, it's checkmate. The gvul is a chelik from the Malav Malkas. It's not separate. It's not separate. That's pshat pre-tzimtzum. Pre-tzimtzum doesn't mean there's no Oid HaGvul. There's Oid HaGvul. And Oid HaGvul gives a room for Olamis, for yesh. There could be a yesh. But what's pshat yesh? Yesh is pshat. The Ein Sof coming out in yesh. The Ein Sof, this Ein Sof coming out in bittul. There's Ein Sof coming out in yesh. Oichmir yesh. That's not the tragedy of yesh. That's not the metzias of Olamis that we know. That's the metzias of Olamis as Ein Sof. When there's a siluk of the Oid HaBligvul, now there's the terror, kavayachol. There's the abandonment of the Oid HaBligvul. So now the Oid HaGvul is on its own. What's pshat it's on its own? Oh, I'm finite. I'm limited. What does it mean? I'm alone. I'm stuck. Oh, this is where this is where Metzias happens. This is pshat Metzias. Metzias is the beginning of definition. Pre-tzimtzum definition is just another way of expressing that which is undefined. Because that which is undefined doesn't have to be undefined. It could be defined also. So the definition of pre-tzimtzum is part of being undefined. The words are wordless. The sound still remains silent. The containers are all light. And the darkness is just another facet of light. Only in post-tzimtzum, where there's the silukar. What's that silukar? Again, it's all conceptual. Silukar means there could be a hergish of finiteness as being finite. Over here, all the tzaras begin. What's that? All the tzaras begin? All the perceptions of concealment really begin. And the Maggid says it's all should be able to be achtos. Without that, you'll never reach achtos. As he's going to be mamshach. Yeah. 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 The Tzimtzum Shaloi Kipshutai, part of it is realizing that the Gvul never left the Bli Gvul. That's what Tzimtzum Shaloi Kipshutai means. Even though there was a Siluk, but it's not Kipshutai. That means the Gvul never left the Bli Gvul. So really your Gvul is just a manifestation of your Bli Gvul. That's the Pchin of Yosef HaTzadik. That's why he was that's Pshat Shlichus. What's Pshat Shlichus? Shlichus means you go to the lowest places of Gvul, but it's all Bli Gvul. That's Pshat of a Shliach. Huh? An echte Shliach. What's Shlichus? You don't stay in Bli Gvul, then I don't need a Shliach. You're sending a Shliach away. What's Pshat away? He's detached. That's what a Shliach is. If you need to do it here, you don't have to send a Shliach. I send a Shliach to go to the other side of the world. So he's detached from me, but he's not. It's all me. 50 years, But that's the word. And that's the koyach hashliach. The koyach hashliach is, he never went into gvul. He was just expressing bli gvul. That's the way in avodah, the avodah. So but it's not by denying gvul. You know, we don't have a problem with gvul. That's his whole word. It's not like that. He's there's no gvul. We don't have a problem with gvul. Gvul is gewaldig. But when the gvul is a chelik of bli gvul, that's not oilemus. that's lifnei tzimtzum. So it's a new dead head in lifnei tzimtzum. You know that lifnei tzimtzum there's only ein sof. He says no, lifnei tzimtzum you have everything. You have the oida gvul also, but the oida gvul is nicht kein gvul, it's a bli gvul.
The job to make the gvul into bli gvul. The job to fuse those two.
Yeah.
So when we feel that there's no edges that we should feel to make edges. That's what the job is.
It's one part of it. It's one part. It's one part when we have to appreciate the fact that it feels that there's no edges. That's the tzimtzum. That's the tzimtzum. It feels like there's no edges. In other words, the gvul feels like bli gvul. That's the tragedy. You see, what happens in our world is we turn the finiteness into infinity. You understand? Because we miss infinity and we can't get it. So we take our finiteness and we make that infinite, and that's sheker.
Make the finite infinite, but we should bring the infinite.
Because the finite is not infinite. The finite is finite. It's meant to be finite.
We should be doing.
Huh? Yeah, shleimus ein sof. Yeah, that's the shleimus ein sof. That the gvul is not separate. So in other words, when there's such a void, what do? I turn the void into infinity. The void becomes holy. Instead of understanding, that I'm looking for the infinite. That's what I'm looking for, and I'm not gonna fill the void. You understand, by worshiping the finiteness of my ego and turning that into infinity. That's gonna make the void much worse because it's gonna detach. Yeah. So that process is gonna be explored now. We understand what the Tzimtzum did. Now, what do I do with this? Yeshikoyach, fine. So now we're all gvul. Okay, so it's now. So that's going to be the whole hemshech of what it means to work through the tzimtzum. Every stage is critical because if you deny what the tzimtzum did, all the integration is going to be fake. You understand? That's why you have to know what the tzimtzum did. L'chayr, if tzimtzum is shalai kipshute, so just say there was no tzimtzum, it's all a delusion. No, there was a tzimtzum. Why is that so important? Because it's not bypassing. If I say there was no tzimtzum, it's just a joke, okay, thank you. So it's like saying I'm really a bird, let me go fly over the building. I'm going to break my bones. You know, whenever people deny their limitedness, when you deny tzimtzum, you end up in a much worse place because you're not dealing with your reality, you're bypassing your reality. That's why we talk about tzimtzum, and then we say, tzimtzum is shalai kipshuta. So that's the gewaldige inyan here. It's the authenticity of embracing all parts of reality and working through these parts, rather than being scared of them. Or to say it in a deeper way, when I'm scared of some of my parts, it means I believe tzimtzum is kipshutai, and therefore I don't want to go there. I have to stay away from certain places because I believe that tzimtzum is kipshutai. So it's a paradox. When we stay away from certain places, we deny them, we repress them, it's because I believe tzimtzum is kipshutai. Only when you know tzimtzum is shalai kipshutai can you go to the lowest places of your gvul because you're good, you're fine. Yosef could go everywhere because he knew tzimtzum was shalai kipshutai. You understand? Your typhus? Huh?
Did Yosef ever go through it where he recognized tzimtzum, or he was always living bli gvul? Or he had
No. The chiddush of Yosef was that he went down. Yeah, that's why in Yosef's life, as I said in the other shir, there was a lot of tears, there was a lot of grief. If he remained in bli gvul, he wouldn't feel pain. He felt pain. You could see in the psukim that he felt pain. It wasn't like, oh, life is perfect. You know, it's never been better. Oh, I love this. I love being in prison. That's not what he felt like. He felt the pain. In other words, he went into gvul. But he was a shliach. It's a big difference. Shlichus doesn't mean I'm not here. To be a shliach, you have to be here. If you're in bli gvul, you're not in shlichus. You're not in shlichus. You understand? The Rebbe was once speaking about shluchim. It was one of the last fabrengens. So he said that when a shlich comes to a city, the Gemara says about Metzia, halach lekarta azal b'nemusay. Whenever you come to a city, you have to follow the mannerisms of that place. Right? You have to speak the language. If a shliach goes to Mexico and he doesn't speak Spanish, or he goes to France and he doesn't speak French, he only wants to speak Yiddish, he won't be able to influence the people. So you have to, the Rebbe said, you have to understand the culture of the people, and you have to accommodate it, and you have to medav sich zupassen. You have to relate to it, but you're a shliach. You understand the vart? If I go there and I think I'm in 770, it's not going to work. You want to stay in Bleakville, it's a beautiful thing, but you have to go into that world. You have to relate, and it's also true with ourselves. You have to go in, you have to relate to all the parts of yourself. You have to speak the language of your parts, but you're a shliach. Assimilation means you forget where you were sent. Yeah. You know, when ambassadors go out to different parts of the world, they have a flag of their country in their house, and they make sure to teach their children the original language where they came from, even if they're living there for 30 years, and the kids go to the schools there. Because the kids have to know you're an ambassador. You know, you're not a native, you're an ambassador. You represent the interests and the culture and the identity of the nation that sent you. So they understand that. If not, if you become part of it, then you lose the whole plot. So right, the tragedy of life is not coming into Gvul. It's divorcing the Gvul from the Bleak. So you have two extremes. One extreme is, I don't come into Gvul, I remain Bleak Gvul. In other words, I don't want to deal with the Tzimtzum. Or, I believe Tzimtzum is Kipshuta, so I don't want to deal with the Tzimtzum. The other extreme is, I believe that there's a Tzimtzum, and there's a Tzimtzum Kipshuta, so I get lost in the Gvul. The whole Chiddush here is, that the Gvul and the Bleak Gvul really are one. And the Tzimtzum creates the perception of separation. But in a pre-Tzimtzum reality, there's no separation. But in order for there to be a world of real finiteness, there is the Tzimtzum of the earth completely, so there could be a chalal and a makom panei, a perception of true emptiness. And not just a perception, an experience of emptiness. At least from our own experience. There's a sefer called Ramach Oisius. Like different ideas from Reb Hillel of Parich. Reb Hillel of Parich was one of the Talmidim of the Mittler Rebbe. It's a Machzadik, the Alter Rebbe. So he says over there, I think it's one of the first ones. He says like this: there's a tzaddik, there's a Beinani, and there's a Rebbe. So he said like this: tzaddik is bli gvul, Beinani is gvul, Rebbe chibur bli gvul gvul. A tzaddik is bli gvul, so to speak. In other words, he lives in the realm of infinity, so to speak, no tzimtzum. A Beinani struggles, so he lives in gvul. What's a Rebbe? A Rebbe is not bli gvul. A Rebbe is the chibur of bli gvul and gvul. So he can understand every nekud of gvul, because he goes into the gvul. Only then can you be a Rebbe, because if you don't understand it, if you're completely above it, it's beautiful. But then you can't lift up the world. You can't really lift up people because you're not there with them. So it's the bli gvul coming into the gvul, and that's Ein Sof, which is Shleimusa de Kula, so you're not afraid of gvul. Of course. That's the ultimate punchline, that the whole void that the Tzimtzum creates is in order to create Achdus. Without the void, there would never be Achdus.
Everybody's going to feel Tzimtzum. You're going to feel Tzimtzum in everybody's personal way, but how are they going to feel it?
Everybody's going to experience Tzimtzum. You know how I know? Because even God experiences Tzimtzum. So even if I'm on the highest level, I'm going to experience Tzimtzum. But as we're learning, it's not a kunst not to experience Tzimtzum. It is a pretty big kunst. I mean, let me put it differently. If you're on a level where you can go pre-Tzimtzum, it's pretty big. But that's not the ultimate kunst. To put it differently, the Alter Rebbe himself, the Rebbe once said in a Maimer, that the Nesiyei Chabad were all neshamas lifnei haTzimtzum. That's what he said. In other words, you're talking about, when you learn Chassidus, yeah, what's the power of it? The power of it, it's lifnei haTzimtzum. It's really an experience of lifnei haTzimtzum. Yeah, but that itself is only 50% of the revolution. It's pretty awesome to be pre-tzimtzum. But the real chiddush is, it's pre-tzimtzum coming into the tzimtzum. In other words, just to remain pre-tzimtzum, you can undo creation. You know, it's back to pressing Control Alt Delete. That's not the vart. The kunz is that the pre-tzimtzum comes into tzimtzum. So the highest level is not to experience tzimtzum; it's to experience tzimtzum. And to redo it, to transform it. Yeah. Otherwise you're telling God, you know, this whole creation was a mistake. Yeah.
And out there, Rebbe writes that tefillah, you could feel that you feel during. Is that pre?
No, Atzilus is post Tzimtzum.
I'm saying that feeling.
Listen, Atzilus relative to Asiya, you could call pre Tzimtzum, because there's Gilui Alakus. But in the ultimate scheme of things, even Atzilus is post Tzimtzum. Because Atzilus has spheres, Chachma, Chesed, Gvura. So even the highest world is already post-Tzimtzum.
That feeling is that a pre-Tzimtzum? Atzilus is that a pre?
Yeah.
That feeling, is that a pre-Tzimtzum feeling?
Yeah. In other words, whenever whenever the person loses their individual detached identity in the presence of Ein Sof, Bittul, real Bittul, that's pre-Tzimtzum. That's the Ein Sof being channeled through the person.
That's the Ratzoi. The Ratzoi is the feeling of, sort of like the Ratzoi is the feeling of pre-Tzimtzum.
That moment of complete Bittul b'Metzias, that's an inyan of Lifnei Tzimtzum. It's the frequency of Lifnei Tzimtzum. Again, like everything, there's so many different madregas in this, but generally, Lifnei Tzimtzum, yeah. There's a Lashon in Chassidus, the Rebbe Rashab writes. He says just the beautiful words. He says, what's the difference of pre-Tzimtzum, post-Tzimtzum? How he defines it. It's like a falit for shtege. He says like this: pre-Tzimtzum, yeah, elikus b'pshitus, v'olam is b'hischachos. Post-Tzimtzum, olam is b'pshitus, v'elikus b'hischachos. Pre-Tzimtzum, elikus is pshitus. That's intuitive. Olam is a hischachos. It's a chiddush, really. You heard of such a metzias? You know, the first time man landed on the moon. Man on the moon. It says post-Tzimtzum, olam is b'pshitus and elikus b'hischachos. So it's a gulf of reality. There's an infinite gulf between pre-Tzimtzum and post-Tzimtzum, and that's the gulf he's talking about. Even though the whole Oid HaGvul was there pre-Tzimtzum, but since the Oid HaBli Gvul was felt and Begilui, so the Oid HaGvul is not felt as something separate. It's just part of the Shleimus. So therefore, you can't have the Metzias of Oilamis that feel detached and separate and feel identity. And even the highest worlds, which are not detached, but still, to be able to feel Metzias, even a Metzias of Elikus, it still needs Tzimtzum. Because even the highest level of Gvul, if it's part of pre-Tzimtzum, it's just completely Bli Gvul.
And the Chachila, feeling the Tzimtzum and bring that Dira B'Tachtonim, that's the...
So Dira B'Tachtonim is the embodiment of Ein Sof in the world of Tzimtzum. It's undoing the Tzimtzum, but it's not undoing it by canceling it. Like, let's make believe it didn't happen. That's not the kavanah. If you make believe it didn't happen, then you shouldn't have a guf, then you shouldn't be physical. That's not the kavanah. And the whole avoid of Torah and mitzvahs is in the gashmis. I can't put on tefillin without a hand, and I can't put on tefillin without an animal, and without ink, and without parchment, and without a head, and without a heart, and without a muscle. So all that is basically the avoid in Tzimtzum. I can't give tzedakah without money. You can't give tzedakah without money, so you need a physical dollar, and a physical check, and a physical bank account, or a physical Zelle and cash pay, whatever. You say there's no tzimtzum, you're shekayach, so the poor man doesn't have what to eat. You're not giving tzedakah pre-tzimtzum. So in order to be mekayim the mitzvah of tzedakah, it's all to have physical money. Physical money means there's a physical world, there's a yesh. And there's me and there's you, and I'm giving this person money. And the same is true in every mitzvah. Even learning. So you're learning with your mouth, you're learning with your brain, you're trying to understand the word, you're saying the word, it's all post-tzimtzum. So the whole Yiddishkeit is in a post-Tzimtzum reality. Why? Because that was the kavanah, Dira B'Tachtonim, to work through, not to undo the Tzimtzum, to transform the Tzimtzum. That's what undoing the Tzimtzum really means. When you transform it, you reach a deeper place than it was before. Because pre-creation, there was no Tzimtzum. Pre-Tzimtzum, there was no Tzimtzum. Now there is a Tzimtzum, and there's still no Tzimtzum. That's the Chiddush, that's Geula. That's the difference of Geula than pre-Eitz Hadas. Pre-Eitz Hadas, pre-creation, pre-Shviras HaKelim, there was no Tzimtzum. The union of Geula is the Geula becomes Geula. Yeah, listen, everything is rooted in oneness. Everything is rooted in Achdus Apshuta and Hashem Echad. Of course. So the truth is, in Atzmos, there's l'chatchila no tzimtzum. That's what the whole tzimtzum we're talking now is in Ur. In Atzmos, he said, Hamoyeru bizgalas, and Atzmos b'chal no tzimtzum. But even in Ur, what's Ur? Ur is the experience. Light, it's the way we experience the Ein Sof. Over here, there was a tzimtzum. And that's what he's explaining here, the tzimtzum in the Ur. In the Moyer, there's b'chal no tzimtzum. The Moyer, you're not explaining tzimtzum k'shutay, shalaik k'shutay. Gvul, bli gvul. There's no tzimtzum b'chol in the moyer. This was the Alter Rebbe's shitta, that in atzmos there was no tzimtzum, and even in oyer, tzimtzum is shaloi kipshuta, which means there was no real tzimtzum. So why don't you say there was no tzimtzum? Because then you're missing the point. Of course there was a tzimtzum in oyer. Now Rizal wasn't joking. But you need to be able to understand what is the pnimius of the tzimtzum. When you say tzimtzum shaloi kipshuta, doesn't mean there was no tzimtzum. Doesn't mean I was joking. Right? It means you need to know the pnimius of the tzimtzum is no tzimtzum. There was a tzimtzum. There's a reason for tzimtzum. There's a motivation in tzimtzum. There's the DNA of the tzimtzum. There's the back end program of tzimtzum. You'll see that there was no tzimtzum. But there was a tzimtzum. I understand. B'chitzayni there was a tzimtzum. But when you go to the pnimius of tzimtzum, you have to understand what it really is. That's what it means. Shaloi kipshuta means don't take things on face value. What do you mean? Doesn't mean the face value doesn't exist. It exists. But you need to be able to be chayter, medav sich der grunteven. You need to go deep and excavate the pnimius of tzimtzum. And then you'll see that the pnimius of tzimtzum is really achdus. That's going to be the hemshech ha'inyan. De-tzimtzumize the tzimtzum. Was? He wants to know how he knew this. You're talking about neshamas that were plugged into atzmos, that are plugged in, are plugged into atzmos ein soif, and channeled the giluyim of ein soif. That's the whole inyan. They were the chutam akasha. Yeah. Anoichi, Moshe Rabbeinu says, "Anoichi oimid beinechem ubein Hashem lahagid lechem es dvar Hashem." It's kipshute. Moshe says, "I stand between you and Hashem to give you the word of Hashem." Moshe wasn't joking. Spashtusa de Moshe b'chol dara v'dara. It says in Zohar, you have Moshe in every day. It says in Medrash, "En lecha dor she'en b'ka Moshe." It's p'chinas oimid beinechem ubein Hashem lahagid lechem es dvar Hashem. It's not. This is not a joke. It's a real Rebbe. Not.
So the Abishur created the tzimtzum, the cholol. There's no. It was emptiness. What was the?
Yeah.
After that, what comes after? You said that then the Abishur inserted.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what? That was just empty. That wasn't.
Yeah.
The purpose wasn't to stay like that. The purpose was.
Yeah. That's why his kashrus to the Rebbe is so important. It's not stam a detail. To be connected. It's not just a little thing. It's an inyan amuhusi. It's an inyan pnimi in chassidus. It's not just everybody needs a teacher, everybody needs a mentor. That's true. Asay l'charav k'nei l'chachaver. But you're talking here about the Eidin Sof coming through in the world. Hashem chose to be at Megala. We're saying this week's parsha. V'yaminu b'Hashem u'b'Moshe Avdai. Really? It was v'yaminu b'Hashem? No. It says in Mechilta that whoever believes in Moshe, it's like he believes in Hashem. If you don't believe in Moshe, it's like you don't believe in Hashem. Why? Moshe's a nice guy. I don't have anything, but I have a direct connection. But it's not like that. Because Moshe is the sinner that Hashem is Megala Ein Sof. Not Chas v'Shalom Mafsik. Because Moshe is Batal b'Metzias. If Moshe wasn't Lifnei HaTzimtzum, it's taka dangerous. That's why when you start worshiping people, it's a dangerous thing. Be careful. Don't worship your therapist, don't worship your rabbi, don't worship your doctor, don't worship yourself. If you're worshiping Moshe, then it's a big problem, because then Moshe is a Metzias. If Moshe is a Metzias, it's dangerous. If Moshe is a Gili of Lifnei HaTzimtzum, then the whole inyan of Moshe is that he doesn't exist. Moshe says, "V'nachnu ma." I am ma. How can Moshe say, "Anoichi em v'nechem Hashem"? Imagine Jacobson stands up and says, "But I stand between you and God. Get out of here, Meshugana." Go to a doctor. Don't stand between me. The reason Moshe could say this, only a person who's either crazy or dangerous or real can say those words. You understand? You can't joke around this. Either you're the real thing. The Rebbe Marash, the fourth Lubavitcher Rebbe, the son of the Tzemach Tzedek, he had 3 sons. He had 4, but one died as an 8-year-old. Avram Sender. His father said he was a Gilgul of the Neshama of the Alter Rebbe. He died as an 8-year-old. He said they should put him on Big Day Shabbos, and he was in bed, he was sick, and he said, he said, the Zayda come, the Alter Rebbe is coming to greet me, and he closed his eyes and he passed away. He was an 8-year-old boy. His father said he had the neshama of the Alter Rebbe. I'll call upon him, but he had another 3 boys. The Razar, Reb Zalman Aaron, the Rebbe Rashab, Reb Shalom Dever, who became the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and the annoying one, Reb Menachem Mendel. So the Rebbe Rashab became the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and but the Razar was older than him. So they were once talking to the Razor about his younger brother, the Rebbe Rashab. Yeah. And so it was he was an older brother, but he didn't feel that it was his inyan. So he gave it over to his younger brother, the Rebbe Rashab. So they once asked him, how he relates to it. You grow up, you're an older brother, he's your baby brother, and then, suddenly he's the Rebbe. It was, and in Chabad, a Rebbe is very serious. It's not a CEO. Lubavitch, Rebbe is like the Alter Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov, in Chabad, they take the Rebbe. It's Lifnei Tzimtzum. It's not a joke. It's not a CEO, it's not a figurehead. It's the real thing. People have a hard time with it because if you don't learn Chassidus, it's hard to understand Taka. It's like what was versta meshuga, So they once asked him about it. So they said that he said, what his brother, if he's a real Rebbe, he says like this. He says, in everything in the world, brilliant answer, in everything in the world, there is extremes, but there's also in the middle. You have a meshuga negvir, You have Elon Musk, right? You have Bezos, you have Meshuga Negvir, and you have a man, a captain who doesn't have $10, but you have in the middle. We call it middle class, even higher class. You have millionaires, you have in the middle. Everything. A chacham, you have a gon, you have a shaitan, you have in the middle, a portion of match. Everything. You could be stingy, you could be, bright and giving, and you have in the middle. Everything, there's extremes. And he says there's one exception, and that is a Rebbe. He says, Ode du bist a Rebbe, ode du bist a Ganav. So what he said, either you're a Rebbe or you're a Ganav. Ein Sach kann ich euch sagen, mein Bruder ist nicht kein Ganav. One thing I can tell, my brother is not a Ganav. That's what I could tell you. So what a Rebbe is, weiß ich nicht. Aber a Ganav is mein Bruder nicht. You understand what he was saying here? And this is what his brother saying. There's no, you say, is my brother the real thing? He's not the real thing. He's like his father, he's like a Samach Tzedek, like the Alter Rebbe. Because in Chassidus Chabad, it's that way. Adir a Rebbe, adir a Ganav. In other words, don't talk about these things. If it's not real, you're a Ganav, you're a thief. You're not just a nice guy, who's trying to get paid and then, trying to run a community. That's a beautiful thing. To be a Rasha calls it, but you're talking about an inyan of a Gili of Eidin Saif. So either you're the real thing or you're a Ganav. And the first thing of a Ganav means you're manipulating. It's very serious stuff. A Ganav doesn't mean that you're stealing from people's bank account. A Ganav is very, very subtle. You're going into their light. You're touching very deep things. You're stealing their soul, or you're becoming something that you're not supposed to be. You're representing something you're not supposed to represent. You have to understand how sensitive this is. It's me'ila behektish. If you manipulate this, you're touching hektish. You're touching people's yichidush b'nefesh. Reb Shmuel Munkus once told us to the Alter Rebbe. I told you the story. It's one of the most amazing stories. The Alter Rebbe was arrested. When they came to him to arrest, so he ran away. And he spent the night at a club, at a bar. The Alter Rebbe a whole night, because he knew they're not going to find him in a club, in a bar. They're not going to think he went there. He was there a whole night with Reb Shmuel Munkus, one of his chassidim. In the morning, he asked him if he should give himself in to the government, or he should stay here. So Reb Shmuel Munkus says, yeah, you should. So he said, why? Because they wanted to execute him. Reb Shmuel Munkus said, Memanavshach. Bist du a Rebbe, wird dir kein Keul nicht nehmen. Bist du nicht, kommt es dir. Mit Wasser Recht hast du weggenommen von hunderte, tausende Jiden den Geschmack in Elam Haza. Any way you look at it, it makes sense. If you're a real Rebbe, their bullet won't reach you. And if you're not, you deserve it. Who gave you the right to deprive hundreds of thousands of Jews from the Geschmack in Elam Haza? And the Alter Rebbe listened to him. The Alter Rebbe went out. He went into prison. But is that what he was telling the Alter Rebbe? This is a chassid speaking to the Alter Rebbe. You deserve it. It's not a joke. You built a whole world around Achdus Hashem, Einoid Mulvadai. You took away from people the Geschmack in Olam Hazeh. Because anybody who learned Chassidus Chabad and internalized it at any point in their life, their Olam Hazeh is already shot. They try hard. They try very, very hard. But it's done. Chabad Chassidim, if they learn Chassidus, they become the most miserable people if they go into Olam Hazeh. It's done. You're finished. Checkmate. There's no geschmack. They try hard. I know people who try very hard. I also try sometimes. There's no way out. If you took it serious, I'm not talking about you just as just part of color war and you're just, wearing a fedora hat. I don't mean wearing a fedora. I mean somebody who really learned Chassidus, took it seriously. Yeah, you lose. You could run the whole world. You could be on a ski trip for Olam Vad. You could make money. You can have all the time. You can have your private plane sitting in your backyard with everything. So he told the Alter Rebbe, who gave you a right to do this to people? Make their Olam Hazeh. Who gave you a right? You deserve it. But this is what the Razal was saying. Adar Rebbe, Adar Aganev. And he says, they wanted to understand if his brother is a Rebbe. He said, I don't know what a Rebbe is, but Aganev he's not. And there's nothing in the middle. It's not in the middle. You're not a CEO. You're not a good CEO. We don't have issues with being a good CEO. But a good CEO is not Lifnei HaTzimtzum. So that's why it's such a serious thing. It's a very, very serious thing. It's not. You're talking about tzipur hanefesh. It's mamish me'ila behekdesh. It's going into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. You don't go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim if you're not a Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. It's too sacred. There's certain places you don't take people if you're not really there, and if understand the pressure, because if there's even a moment of manipulation, it's me'ila behekdesh. You're tampering with yichidush benefesh. Bist a ganav, your mom, and you're worse than a ganav. A ganav, at least you're a ganav. You steal $1,000, okay, and even a great ganav, so you steal $100,000. But here, you're not stealing $100,000. You're stealing the soul. You're stealing the Ein Sof in people. That's a different type of ganav. That's what the Shul Munka says. You deserve it. Yeah. It's pikuch nefesh. It's my pikuch nefesh. So I want to say, you have to understand the purity. People don't understand the purity of the Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe. You're talking about a level of purity that it's hard to have a hasaga. I'm saying that the internal avodah of these people, of what they had to be worked out to take on this position, is something that's l'mayla mehasaga. I saw it by the Rebbe. You could see it. You could even see it on the videos. There's no such a thing, a moment where you're off. If you're offline for 1 minute, then quit. I have no problem. You're allowed to be offline. This is very. You're talking to somebody. It's yichidush benefesh. It's not. You can't be offline. It's not a 9 to 5. And we're not talking about a kind person and a good person and an erlich yid. That's of course. But you're talking about a different Indian here. It's a b'china v'yaminu b'Hashem b'Moshe Avda. Yeah, this is very emotional stuff. It's very. There was a chassid, his name was Rabbi Yukusia Liepler. He was a chassid of the Alter Rebbe. He's one of the big chassidim. The Alter Rebbe passed away, he went to the Mittler Rebbe. The Mittler Rebbe passed away, he went to the Tzemach Tzedek. The Alter Rebbe gave him a bracha for Arichas Yamim. He said, I want to bless you for Arichas Yamim. So he made a condition. He said, I'll take your bracha. It's also only in Chabad. He gives you a bracha and he says, Aber nit mit poyere sheyarin. I'll accept your blessing for long life, but it shouldn't be peasant-like years. And he tells the Alter Rebbe, Einayim lahem v'lo yiru, aznayim lahem v'lo yishmo, af lahem v'lo yirichon. They have eyes, they don't see a lakus. They have ears, they don't hear a lakus, and they can't smell the emes. If that's going to be my life, don't bless me with Arichas Yamim.
Right?
Yeah. So the Rebbe once said over the story, Yutas Kislev once, Tavshel Chavav, and he said, I don't understand. A Yid gives you a bracha for Arichas Yamim, the Alter Rebbe. You make conditions? You come to me and say, I want to give you $100 million. I need you to come Monday morning to my office and deposit. So today to Meshugana. The Alter Rebbe is offering you a bracha for Arichas Yamim. What are you making conditions with them? You don't want to be a pious, so work on yourself. So listen to this. He says, but Yekosel Epler, Chassidus was so real that by him, if it would be Payir Shayaran, it wouldn't be a bracha, it would be a curse. He wasn't making conditions in the bracha. He was telling the Alter Rebbe, bless me, don't curse me. That's the void. He wasn't making conditions in the bracha.
I don't want to live if it's...
Yeah. Don't. It's like, I'll give you $100 million, but you're not allowed to talk to your kids ever again. You should kayach, I don't need your bracha. I'll give you $100 million, but you have to stay in my basement, loyal and vad. You understand? He's not making conditions in the bracha. After the Mittler Rebbe passed away, he went to the Tzemach Tzedek. After the Tzemach Tzedek passed away, he didn't go to the Rebbe Marash. He went, but he couldn't call himself a chassid. So they said, why not? You went from the Alter Rebbe to the Mittler Rebbe to Tzemach Tzedek, why didn't you? So listen to what he answered. He says, the Alter Rebbe, I gave him my nefesh, ruach, neshama. The Mittler Rebbe, I gave my chaya. The Tzemach Tzedek, I gave my yechid. I don't have anything else to give.
Who was that?
The Kusha Lepler. I don't have anything else to give. In other words, it wasn't stamepes, I'm going to sit. I already gave. I'm explaining to you what his kashrus is. Okay. Shengata verbringen euch. But you hear the Razor's answer, Moededike answer, no? I know my brother is King Ganav nisht. I don't know what a Rebbe is, but I know that he's not a Ganav. He couldn't say it better, basically.
If I may ask, what was the...
That's called Yediyas Hashlila. Sometimes, he can't know what a Rebbe is, but he knows what a Ganav is, and he knows that he's not a Ganav. That's enough.
He doesn't fool people.
Not only doesn't fool people, he doesn't fool himself.
Oh.
The deepest gneva is not fooling people, it's fooling yourself. There are good people, they don't fool anybody, but they fool themselves. That's a much worse gneva. Gneva's das, loy signev, the Reb Simcha ben Abshischa once said this. Ganve nicht von sich. Don't. When you don't recognize your gevul, you're a ganev. When you read Zechain that you're only bleigvul and you're not gvul, you're a ganev. You're stealing the secret of Tzimtzum Shalai Kipshute from your gvul. You're stealing from your guf the truth. And you're also stealing from Hashem the kavana of the Bria. So that's gneva. On the other hand, if you don't know your bleigvul, b'stoich haganev. You're stealing from yourself who you really are. You're taking that away from you and from others. Hemshech Yavai, Morgan Be'ezer Hashem Bli Neder. Ja. Ye na 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 edere ya ra 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 ye da ye na 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 dere hamba ya tafasta wir haben schon was mal geredet wegen des kashrus a paar chadashim tzedek dachtzach Bam 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 yo yo yo